You awakened me from an eternity of darkness. You are not for the living. You are not for humankind. Welcome to Rebooty and the Beast. I'm Matt Molinaro.
And I'm N. Burke. In the first episode, we review an original piece of media, and in episode 2, we discuss the reboot. Sometimes we do a series, and this is the conclusion of a 4-part Nosferatu series. This is Nos-FOUR-atu.
That's right. Was that dramatic of enough of a beginning? I tried to do the voice, and I chickened out a little bit last.
Well,
listen,
listen,
you got a hybrid.
Bill Skarsgard did training with an opera singer and like a Mongolian throat singer to perfect his Nosferatu voice. So I think it was a valiant effort.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, I could have done it a little better, a little more gravelly, but again, bok bok. That's my chicken sound. I almost did one of her quotes, but I think I did a melancholic one last time I had the chance, so...
I think the last one you did was about stars and the only thing that exists is death or something like that.
Yeah, and hers was the other one was gonna be like, oh, come to me, creature of the night. And I was like, let's tone it down to about being a death monster.
Death monster horny, yeah.
Well.
All right. Well, this is 2024, Robert Eggers' Nosferatu.
Just 1 year after what we watched last week.
Yes,
shockingly.
Although almost 10 years after the
creation, filming,
that one created. Yep. As I said, starring Bill Skarsgård, Lily Rose Depp, and Nicholas Hoult and Willem Dafoe. Am I forgetting anyone?
Let's see. I mean, there are some other people whose names I'm not as familiar with that were in it. But I think you got the main ones.
Okay, all right.
You got, I remember Bernie as Aronach. I mentioned, I don't know him, but he was just so good.
Yeah.
Especially in comparison to the other versions
to
of this
all of them. Oh, so let's quickly rank the Renfields / Knox. So we had the silent film one. Okay. We had the French giggly one from 1979. We had we had who was God, I don't even remember him in the 23 version that we just covered.
He was manic.
Gosh. Oh, no, I remember him now. I described him as Scott Adsit, from 30 Rock. And then the one in this one. So I would say in my ranking of Renfields would be this one was number 1, silent film number 2, 2023, the 2023 was number 3, and dead last is the 1979 Renfield.
Spot on.
Okay, great.
He put the nail in his coffin, with that laugh.
That laugh.
For sure. That was just... If I wasn't having, whiplash still from some of the choices in the last film, character-wise, like that prosthetic on that blind man.
Oh, God, I forgot about that.
I would have more of a distaste in my mouth still for that laugh, but some other things have replaced that.
Yeah. Do you have the IMDb plot summary for this?
I do. So this one says... A gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake.
I like that. That's accurate to me.
Gorgeous. Can we talk about these summaries as the time has gone on?
Yes. You
could tell what's happening here and who is responsible for writing these summaries and how much that's changed. It used to be someone hey, can you categorize a bunch of these movies that are out for this online platform?
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, okay, fine. A movie about a vampire named Nosferatu going after a woman named Ellen. And now it's a new movie and you have some young, I'm starting out in the industry and I'm going to write the hell out of this summary.
Yeah.
Young in their career, I mean. A gothic tale of obsession.
So
I love
good.
it. I love it. Give me that job, by the way. If it pays well, hey IMDb.
They probably get it directly from the movie production company, I bet.
I want to pretend it's a job.
Okay. And kind of like how we we like to pretend that naming paint colors is a job, but it's actually just a robot that does it.
Naming is that true?
I think I did read that is not a true job.
I mean, I guess that makes sense at this point. I bet it was, right? Maybe.
Maybe. Okay. Well, we open on a crying young woman, a girl, who says, "Come to me, a guardian angel," because it seems like she's very lonely, and she sure gets a response. In a language that we don't recognize.
Oh, that's right.
I seem to recall that they used like a dead language for Nosferatu in this film.
Yeah, like an actual one?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And he says, "You awakened me from an eternity of darkness."
Ooh, that was better. That was better than mine.
Thank you. I have not been practicing. Do we want to just talk about the voice really quickly, since we have both now attempted it?
Yeah. It was, I think, instantly iconic.
I agree. I think it was perfection. I loved I will say I like to watch things with captions because I have a hard time understanding things sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw this in the theater, it was harder to like catch everything he was saying, especially because it's so loud in a theater that I feel like sometimes you might not catch the dialogue. So when I rewatched it at home the other day and I had captions, it was great to be able to be like, oh, that's exactly what he said. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to rewatching it with captions because listeners, I watched this in the theater a couple of weeks ago and I took notes in the theater. And let me just pause for a moment before we get into this. Can I tell you what my theater experience was?
Of course.
I almost forgot because I had blocked it out of my memory. We went to the theater, and the whole time there were people behind us that were definitely teenagers.
Okay.
And did not care about being quiet in the movie theater.
Ugh.
I hate that. But I'm not going to like be the person doing the smacking my head around thing. I'm just going to block it out and enjoy myself and like try my best unless it's terrible or I'll move my seat. But there was nowhere to move the seat because it was packed. And it was so annoying because every time someone said something like, "Come to me," or "He's coming," or "Coming," it was like, "Coming! Oh my god, this is so cringy. Oh my god." He said, "Coming." I was like, oh my god, this is every single time a bunch of insecure guys surrounded by their girlfriends were like, "Oh, coming." Oh,
you should have stabbed them in the eye with your pen.
I wanted to die. And then when there were like really intense moments happening that we'll talk about, they were like, "What the fuck? Like, what's happening?" Because they couldn't handle seeing anything on. And then at the end, one of them was like, "I thought this was supposed to be a horror movie."
Oh my god.
Yeah, so that was my experience in the theater. So I wonder if as I'm reading my notes, I'll see like me scraping my pen into the paper. Ripping it.
Suddenly you're just writing. You're like, oh, this is where I shifted over to writing in my blood because I was so angry. Blood was dripping from my eyes.
Exactly. So I am also looking forward to watching my copy to watch at home with the captions as well for that reason. So
yeah,
we both have our reasons for watching with captions this time.
Well, all that is to say, I think Bill Skarsgard's voice was perfection, and he should be applauded for that.
You, like, felt it in the movie theater,
You
like, the
did.
bass of it.
Yeah.
It was so perfectly gravelly. I feel like it would be good for, like, Shridhar Haran in Wheel of Time. Which
I agree, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Ugh. Anyway, it was great. Bill Skarsgård just does those roles, though, right?
Well, he does, and I have to say, I'm not a big horror person typically, so I've never seen some of the other things that he's been in, like It or It Follows, maybe. I don't know. But he was phenomenal in this.
Yeah, I love horror movies, but I'm not the hugest fan of the new It movies, like completely. But him in them is, like, unquestionably incredible. Like,
yeah,
beyond. I can almost not remember the old clown from It, and that used to haunt my memories. So, yeah, that's kind of big. So, anyway, back to this movie.
Yeah. I also have to say the shadow work that they do in this movie, like, is also phenomenal. Like, From minute one, when you see his like shadow in the curtains and it like flaps back, so he's not there, but his shadow is there. I think is so cool.
Yes, I wrote down, I'm already loving the shadow work. Like,
yes.
One of my very first notes.
Yeah.
I also like the way her sleepwalking is more in this. It's more realistic to what seems like is actually happening.
Yes.
But we see that right away. So that's why I think I wrote that note.
I agree. So she swears to be with him for eternity. And then, I mean, obviously I'm no longer a teenager, but I do understand the, like, feeling. There are moments. Okay, I'm just going to say it. When she is overtaken by Nosferatu, it is evident that there is a sexual overtone to it.
Throughout this whole thing there is. So, I mean, it's there, but it's not completely unintentional. Like,
right,
oh my
exactly.
God, they wrote cum. Do they know that cum means that too? It's like kind of the point.
Yeah.
But it's not that I didn't, like, at first when it was happening, I kind of like rolled my eyes and like smirked to myself for my own childishness, and then I was like, okay, get it out of your system.
That's all they have right now. That's their only repertoire for humor.
Farts and cum. Anyway.
So she swears to be with him for eternity. She does some cum spasming, and then we get a little title that says "Years Later," and we meet our Thomas Hutter, who is Nicholas Hoult. Who, one of my pieces of trivia that I was going to share at the end is, did you know originally the two stars for this movie were going to be Anna Taylor-Joy and what's his name, Harry Styles?
Oh, I heard Harry Styles. I didn't hear Anna Taylor-Joy.
Yeah.
So
I'm happy. I'm happy with what we ended up with. Frankly.
Me too. I don't think I could. No offense to Harry Styles, I like some of his music a lot, but I don't think that would have been a choice. But I could see her doing this too.
Yeah.
Different though.
Well, so he is, of course, as we know, this movie very closely, I think, follows the plot of the earlier Nosferatus.
Yes.
Of, they're newly married. He's like setting off to work. She's very melancholic, of course. Although in this one, she's like, oh, our honeymoon was too short yet. And she's like horny. She's horny for him and she wants to bone. And he's like, I have to go to work. I'm sorry. And he sets off to work. I will say the aesthetics of this movie are, in my opinion, far better than any of the others that we've seen.
Oh, by far. And I mean, I know they had a bigger budget and we're here in 2025, but
yeah,
wow, it was just so... Horror movies could be so corny. Remakes, as we've seen, can be a little bit hokey. And sometimes there's a vision they're going for that doesn't quite hit all the way. 2023 Nosferatu, in my opinion. But this could have been so cornball, like Sin City Part 2. But it was so good. It was so... In the movie theater, the graveliness of his voice, the music, the shadows, and the way it was shot, and the scenery. I read it was like a real castle. I mean, of course it was.
Yeah.
Which is better, though, than all the stupid nonsense you see with some of these other movies. It was great. Really, really just transported you there.
Yeah. So it's Germany, 1838. He's off to work at Knock Estate Agents. And we meet Knock, who is, telling him that a new husband requires new wages. He's got a new client for him, a very old line of nobility who wishes to acquire a home. And he's identified for him Grunwald Manor. And he tells Hutter he's too infirm to travel, so you must travel to him in a small country of Bohemia, which was a shift from the others. And Hutter is like, can't he just like sign when he gets here then? Like, do I really have to do a several week travel across the multiple countries? And he's like, no, you have to go. And he tells him it's, Count Orlok. And he's like, okay, all right, I guess.
Is this when he goes to the snowy... Is that the snowy village he's going to? Bohemia?
I think Bohemia is meant to be Transylvania in this movie.
Okay. Bohemia. That's interesting.
Yeah. Unless I misheard that or something. But anyway. He goes to bring Ellen flowers because he's like feeling bad that he's gonna leave her, and we get the kind of scene from, I want to say at least the first one, but maybe also the 1979 one, of her being upset that he has killed these flowers, that they're just going to die.
Yeah.
And
yes, that has carried over. I wrote that down. I like that carried that over in like literally every Nosferatu.
yeah.
It was weird to me in the first one, and I remember you kind of like explained to me her like melancholic attitude, and I was like, all right. And then I was like, oh, look at this. It carries through. Kind of like him being a dick at the restaurant.
Yeah. Well, I feel like he's less of a dick. There is no dickishness in this one.
Yeah, I don't think I noted any of it, but
yeah.
There's my one, my first complaint.
Yeah. So she's like, you can't leave. And she tells him of her dream, which is that it's their wedding, but there was not in a chapel. There was thunderclouds overhead, and Hutter wasn't at the altar. It was death at the altar. And she says, but I was so happy when I turned around, everyone was dead, but I'd never been so happy as in that moment when I held hands with death. And he's like, maybe don't tell anyone else about this.
I was like, oh, how is he to react to this?
Yeah, exactly. But she insists that it's a portent of something awful coming. And of course, as we know, it is.
If I were him, I'd be like, even if it's not, something's wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe I don't go on this trip that I don't want to go on at all.
Yeah. So he entrusts her to Harding, the shipmaster, and his wife, Anna, much like in some of the others, unlike last year's, which had the lesbian sister.
Yes.
They have 2 daughters as well, whose names I didn't write down because it doesn't matter. And he and Harding have like a little boys chat where he's like, when are you going to get your girl pregnant? Like, my wife is pregnant with child number 3. And apparently Hutter had like borrowed money from Harding, like to get them started and whatever. And he's like, well, when I'm not a pauper, maybe we'll have a child. And so he's hoping that this job that he has with Count Orlok will kind of pull them out of financial difficulties. They go to bed. Secrets. Yes. They go to bed, and Hutter and Ellen practically like fuck right there on the floor. She at night makes a little locket for him with her hair and gives it to him the next day. But I
do that for Davey before he goes to work, by the way.
Every day. You just cut off a lock of his hair every day.
Yeah, my own. I just put it in a little a little locket, and I just tuck it away and just close and just wait for him to find it. It's just fun.
Just a fun little thing for him to discover.
Yes.
So then we cut to Nock, who is naked in a circle of candles, speaking an unknown language and writing in his own blood. And that was quite a shocking transition for me in the movie.
I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, and then suddenly there's Nock writing in his own blood in a circle of candles. Yep. My note was yikes, but I actually like this like depiction of Nock because it's much more effective in showing his connection to Orlok and Nosferatu and like the dark world of spirits or wherever they call Transylvania than like him randomly reading a letter and waving his hand over it and it glows in a charmed opening way. In my opinion. So
I agree.
Thought this was way more creepy.
I agree. I think it is, I think the charmed letter from the last one did have its sort of merit of like, oh, there's some sort of hypnosis-y, magic-y stuff happening. But this one, I think, obviously improves on that.
Yeah.
So he says that he shall presently be in thy rule, and I shall attend thee here near the object of your contract. So what we kind of learn throughout the course of this film is that agreement that Ellen made in her youth is a contract that has yet to be fully fulfilled. So the whole thing is about her sort of summoning him from the other plane and fulfilling this agreement that she made with him.
That's new.
Okay. Yeah, and I actually think that that's kind of the best reason we get in any of them for his obsession with her and why he suddenly is interested in moving to whatever area they're living in,
I agree.
Yeah. So Hutter the next morning rides off on horseback. And I will say, I do feel like there are moments where they reference the 79 Nosferatu because I feel like some of the scenes of him like riding off on horseback and stuff did feel like the 1979 version, but obviously we don't get like 25 minutes of flute music while he's riding around on a horse. But it did feel like it kind of referenced that a little bit.
I definitely noticed a lot of little references, I felt, to the old one that weren't like quite as overt.
Yeah.
I also read like kind of a cool piece of trivia in the scenes that he's traveling in the village with the snow. I read that he used frozen potato flakes.
Yeah.
To which is like, I guess, something they used in other movies to make the snow instead of doing CGI, which I thought was effective. I wouldn't know it was frozen potato flakes.
No, and sometimes CGI snow can look really bad, so I'm glad that he did that as well.
Do you remember the snow in The Wiz? When she's flying through the air. Okay.
Oh, God. The Wiz. So he arrives at the little town outside the village, like he always does. Mm-hmm. People are kind of like celebrating and touching him. And I still don't understand why people are like touching him and obsessed with him. And you know, it quickly turns to like unsettling men laughing at him.
Yes.
And then the innkeeper kind of like shoos them all away. And, you know, he refers to them as gypsies and calls them filthy. And so there's all of that.
Is this in Dracula, maybe? Like, that I'm not aware of? The point... I don't understand the point of this. I guess that they're trying to be like, oh, they haven't seen a new person in these parts venturing beyond, like, you know, in so long, and it's a city on the edge of going to, you know, on the way to going to Transylvania, or whatever they're calling it. And so they're, like, affected by the madness of being in proximity to it or whatnot, or only people who are mad would live so close or something. I don't know, but is this a thing in Dracula?
I do remember in the novel that, if I'm recalling it correctly, because it's been a couple of years since I read it, I do think he spends more time in this village area before going up to the castle than a movie can really dedicate to it. But I don't remember them being kind of like all I really remember is sort of the interior scenes of like he takes note of the like garlic in the windows and all the crosses and all of that sort of stuff. So he's like taking note of the superstition aspects in the novel, but I don't remember what the relationship was like between him and the village folk in the novel.
Yeah,
really. So anyway,
this is when he goes inside the inn and they're like, you know, telling him, don't go to... What are you doing? Don't go to
Orlok's castle. Never say that name. I like the costuming on the old woman who like shows him to his room. It's so detailed and like embroidered and beaded and looks very cool.
Yeah, a lot of the costume work in this was really cool.
I agree.
Even the simpler like looks, like Nosferatu's look overall was just really cool.
I agree.
Anyway.
So she begs him not to go to Orlok's castle. She says, beware his shadow. There is no escape. But she's saying all of this in Romanian, I believe. And I don't think his character speaks Romanian. So he's just like, okay, this old lady is yelling at me. What the fuck? And we get a new scene. He goes to sleep and he wakes up in the middle of the night and he sees them guiding like nude woman on a horse, and we see captions of them saying, you know, this virgin child, bless her, or guide her stallion to the unclean spirit. And he sees them like dig up a grave and plunge a stake into its heart, and he kind of like wakes up, and I think he's unsure at this moment whether it was a dream or not.
Yeah.
But I think he thinks it was real.
Yeah, because aren't his feet muddy?
Okay, so that was something I wasn't clear on, because he does look at his feet, or there's like a foot shot, and I was like, well, maybe they're implying that he went out there?
I think that's what it is. Like, he thinks it's a dream. Okay. He wonders if it's a dream, and he hopes it was, tries to convince himself, and then he sees his feet are muddy, and he's like, oh, I was outside. So I wandered outside and actually saw that.
Okay.
Or did he? Was he sleepwalking, and he just wandered outside and dreamed it still?
Or is this all a land of phantasms because he wakes up and everybody is gone?
Exactly. Even no horse.
No horse. I kind of loved that. I loved that it was sort of like, what is really happening here? Because, you know, the original described as the land of like thieves and phantoms, and so having them kind of all vanish, I think, was really cool. And I don't think that happens in the book, but again,
I like it, and I like that it's so like active and loud and crazy before when he gets there, and it's so stark now.
Yes,
and like
I agree.
Because the time of day is different, it's shot totally different, so it seems more spooky and like ghostly like now.
Yes.
And I just thought, just a note at this moment, because there's a lot of tension in this moment when he sees, like, everyone's gone. There's a correct amount of time and tension used in this film, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Whereas some of these have been longer.
Fair. Yeah, I think yeah, fair. So he walks to Orlok's castle, kind of like in the 79 version. Mm-hmm. I do love, and of course, as with the others, he is met by Orlok's carriage halfway there-ish. But I really loved how he's at the crossroads when the carriage arrives.
Yes.
Because for some reason, like crossroads always have that sort of spiritual connection to like evil and the devil or whatever sort of thing. And so I really liked that they did that.
Yeah, it always feels like some sort of like nexus point, like,
yes,
okay, here we go. This is going to change everything. I had forgotten about that, but I had wrote like a special note here, him at the crossroads for the coach, which I thought was so cool. And I love the way the coach and stuff was depicted. It was very like spectral.
Yes. Oh, that's all. Sorry, I thought you were going to say something else that you had written a different note.
Oh, no, I just think it was just cool. I just thought it was really cool. And I like that, if I remember, like, the coach just kind of, like, opens for him.
Yes.
Like, mysteriously, and he's like, oh.
I really like that, again, maybe this is just my bad eyesight, but I liked that you could hear the carriage before you could see it. Mm-hmm. I felt like that added quite a bit of eeriness to it.
Yeah.
And I love how he's kind of, like, hypnotically pulled toward the carriage.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at this point in the movie where, he arrives at Orlok's castle and, all of that sort of stuff. I am very appreciative with very, very few instances, even though this movie is very dark, I have no issue seeing things. And as we know, there are a lot, like, hello, Game of Thrones, the entire 8th season. Like, there are directors who film things at night, and it's just like, I legitimately can't see anything. Like, what am I supposed to be looking at? And so I think this director did a really great job of making use of shadow without it being overwhelming and just blackness.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point.
Anyway.
Because there's a lot of darkness in this movie. It could be very easy to do that, too.
Exactly, yeah. As we mentioned, Bill Skarsgard, which my phone autocorrected to Bill Skateboard.
Oh, Bill Skateboard, my favorite. Totally rad.
Good old Bill Skateboard. Voice is amazing. He, says the usual of like, you are late and all my attendants have retired.
It's past midnight, motherfucker.
And Orlok tells him to like set out the deed and sit, and he's like, wouldn't you rather wait until morning, sir? And he's like, I need to stop doing the voice, I'm sorry. But he commands him to call me your lord, and, I will be addressed as the honor of my blood demands it. Mm-hmm. His breathing is so intense, too.
Oh, my God. I wrote that down. I wrote, he breathes so creepy. I wrote, this is such a vibe.
Such a vibe.
I wrote the voice over and over and over again. And I thought he was just so menacing.
Yeah.
But, like, not overly, like...
Not in an overly physical way. He was just, like, spiritually menacing.
Yes, his presence. I was just going to say, it wasn't like, as I was trying to form the words, I was, like, hunching my shoulders and, like, spindling my fingers like Wendy when she did the creeping down the steps. Like,
yes,
it wasn't, that's a perfect way to say it. It was just his, like, presence and the voice and the way he kind of, like, looked, the way people reacted to him. So kudos to those around him as well, of course. But, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That was so cool.
I also really like how they filmed this scene of like we're not really seeing his entirety. We see sort of like pieces of him. Again, we get like hands and stuff, but it's sort of like filmed centering Hutter's anxiety of like something's not right here, but we see sort of Orlok circling around him and like appearing tangentially in the scene and stuff. So again, I think they did a great job of sort of like building up the tension of like, we see his fear, but we don't really see the object of his fear in full yet.
Yeah.
And I really liked that.
That's actually a good point. That's one of my favorite pieces of trivia that I read about this was that, just like you just said, in promoting the movie, they like purposely hid what he looked like in his full regalia and his makeup and everything. And I think it was, let me see. Yeah, a few weeks before the film's release, they just unveiled it. And before that, it was like little partial shots or the other main characters and things like that, which I think was smart too, you know?
I agree.
'Cause I didn't really know what he was going to look like when I went to go see it, to be honest, besides like the whatchamacallit, poster.
Oh, yeah.
That had like part of his face on it. So it was so spooky to me too.
Yeah. So he cuts his hand, as usual, and Orlok says, "Take heed what you do," and says he might ease his wound and advances on him, and Hutter's terrified, and we kind of cut before we see him sort of like launch himself on Hutter or anything. We cut to the beachside graveyard with Ellen.
Yes.
They kept the beachside graveyard. Okay,
You
I
kinda
did
have
read
to
one
at this
piece
point.
of... I know. And I did read something that, you know, people online... Again, I haven't done like deep research on beachside graveyards, but some people online have also been like, why a beach seems like a terrible place for a graveyard. And other people have said that their theory is that the markers are indicators of people who were lost at sea.
Oh, that makes sense.
And I was like, okay, I could see that. So maybe that is what it's supposed to be. But maybe also there are beachside graveyards I do not know about. Anyway.
That makes more sense. Because honestly, though, if you look at the other movies, the crosses are all sort of like close together to be a graveyard.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway.
Ellen has a great line where she's at the beach where she says, "Do you ever sometimes not feel like a person?" And my note was, her and Barbie should hang out.
Oh my God, you're so funny because I wrote, because she says something about like feeling like a puppet, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I wrote, "Do you ever feel like a plastic bag?"
Oh my God, that is so funny. And Anna, in trying to be like kind of comforting to her, is like, well, you know, we all feel out of sorts sometimes. And she's like, no, something is close at hand. Of course, she senses impending doom. She's worried about Hutter, and she's right to be, because we cut back to Hutter, who is waking up on the floor of the castle. And it was at this moment that I realized on my second watch that we never got the like book of vampires scene at the inn like we did in every other version.
Oh, you're right.
We like never ever experienced that. And I think I like that because it again adds to the like what is happening vibe to the characters.
Because it's not really necessary. The whole book of vampires scene, if it's not a silent film, is it necessary? Honestly,
I don't think so.
You can
I don't
explain
think so.
away the other stuff with dialogue and people talking
Yeah.
about Nosferatu and being afraid of him, and that you don't really need it.
Yeah.
As we see.
So sorry, I lost my place in my notes.
It's okay. I wrote that he woke up on the floor in this dusty old place. So
Yes. Okay. So, yes, it's like the castle. It's so funny. What I don't know if you know this, but I'm gonna say this first and then I'll tell you. So, I have a note here that I think the castle looks amazing. Like it's not just empty; it's like dusty and there's detritus and it's like crumbling. Like it really looks like something that has been abandoned for hundreds of years, kind of thing, where like literally dirt and dust and leaves and stuff accumulate in corners and piles and stuff.
yeah.
This is the same castle they used in the 1979 version.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, which, you know, looked okay, but it looked clean in the 1979 version. And so it's kind of cool that they were able to use that same location, but really make it look much more dilapidated and unused and empty.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. Anyway, he sees his wounds, the wounds on his neck in a mirror. And then we cut to another scene with that night Orlok looking over the contracts, which are in a language that we can't read. And he passes it over to Hutter and says, like, here, you must sign as solicitor. And Orlok says the contract is in the language of his forefathers. And he sees the token that Ellen has given him hanging off his coat, and he asks to see it. And, kind of creeps out over it and says he's fortunate in his love. And Hutter hasn't signed the contract, and so he pulls out a box and says, "Oh, I would never neglect your commission." He gives him this heavy bag of money, and Hutter signs it, and he says, "The covenant is signed." And later we learn that this had nothing to do with the property, that this was a contract essentially nullifying his marriage with Ellen and thereby making her available to Orlok.
How respectful that he, wanted to make sure she was legally free.
Yeah.
In the eyes of the law.
So he says, "Now we are neighbors." And I promised I was going to stop doing the voice, but I just can't help myself.
That was perfect.
And Orlok says, you must wish to retire. And Hutter's like, I'd like to go as soon as possible. Yeah. I feel like maybe I'm taking ill. And he says, "You will remain and rest yourself." And says, "You will obey this my counsel." And he's like, "My locket," as the doors sort of close behind Orlok. And he just wakes up in bed again. And this time he sees wounds on his chest, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, where he searches the castle looking for a way out, but everything is locked. And eventually he smashes open a door and finds Orlok's crypt room.
Yes. I thought this was
the coffin. Yes, the coffin looks great. We see the sigil of Orlok on it. He opens it. Inside is Orlok, nude. I don't know why he's nude in this movie, but hey.
Hey.
And he picks up a pickaxe and tries to kill Orlok with it, but Orlok grabs it and yanks it away and stands up, and we see Vampire Dong. Mm-hmm. Right. Which, fun trivia, Bill Skarsgård gave the prosthetic penis to Nicholas Hoult as a gift, and Nicholas Hoult has it framed and hanging in his house.
That's beautiful.
Which I just think is really funny.
I love that.
Yep.
I guess why would a vampire care about modesty?
Yeah.
That's human.
True, I guess.
He only probably does it because he has to in
Yeah.
presence of human beings in order to feed.
Yeah. Anyway, he gets chased out of the crypt room by wolves that suddenly appear. And I do remember wolves being kind of a central figure in the Dracula novel. So I can't remember exactly how they show up in the novel, but I like that they've kind of brought them into this movie.
Yeah, they chased the carriage earlier, too.
Yes, and I do remember that, yes, from the novel. And then we get a scene, Orlok, after he's just standing naked in his coffin, huffing the locket and saying, I'm gonna cough if I do it now. "Your husband is lost to you. Dream of me, only me."
I literally was like, he's sitting in the coffin, sniffing the locket like his poppers.
Oh my god, seriously. I think this movie does a better job of establishing the mind control aspect much better than the past ones.
Yes.
Because we see the next thing we see is Hutter is has barred the crypt door closed and is kind of panic breathing, leaning against it. Mm-hmm. But then we see the shadow of his hand mind control Hutter to open the crypt door that he had just barricaded. And I love that. I love the sort of just menacing aura of control that we see in this movie.
Yeah, me too. And I like more use of the shadow in these sort of practical ways, not just the scary ways. These more symbolic ways, like the heart later and the other ones and stuff. I like more uses of it that way, because why not if you're going to use it that way at all?
Yeah. So Ellen faints in her area, and we get kind of an erotic scene of Orlok humping and sucking on Hutter.
Yes.
And this is where Dr. Sievers arrives back in Germany, and he's like, "Oh, she's just sleepwalking because of congestion of the blood. She should sleep in her corset and it will regulate her womb." Oy.
Yeah, yikes.
Yikes indeed. And he gives her some ether so that she sleeps more deeply. Oh, Hutter awakes, and there are wolves in his room, and he just jumps out the window to avoid the wolves from attacking him and falls into a river. which is very far below. It looks like he would probably die from that.
Yeah, and instead he just has a screaming fit, so
Yeah.
it's better than dying.
Yeah. So we cut to Ellen asking Harding about how there's been no word of Hutter, and she like wants to go after him, and he forbids it. And Harding and his wife kind of talk about how hard it's been having Ellen around because she's such a bummer, and she's having her fits, and then she has one of her coming fits on the beach,
right?
And Dr. Severs kind of like attends to her again, but this is where we get the scene of Dr. Severs being told of a new patient being brought into the prison / hospital, and how he had like killed 3 sheep with his bare hands and was eating them raw.
Eesh.
And it's of course our best friend Knock.
We knew.
Yeah.
Who else, of
course. He's eating pigeons. He bites the head off a pigeon, and he says he is coming.
I am no longer just a servant.
Yes, I was chosen to serve him, and I know what he covets. And he has a line about how he will cast curses upon you, and blah blah blah, and reign over all your empty corpses.
And they're like, okay,
so, yeah,
we got it. We got a live one.
Yeah. We cut back to Hutter, who is found by a woman who finds him by the river and takes him to sort of a church hospital. And meanwhile, Severs is trying to solve whatever is wrong with Ellen. And he's like, well, maybe we should talk to this professor that I used to have. His name is Von Franz. And in the book, he was Von Helsing.
Mm-hmm.
Van Helsing, sorry. And he's like, maybe he'll be able to diagnose her, and Harding's like, well, why haven't we talked to him yet? And he's like, well, he was kind of kicked out for like getting too invested in like studying alchemy and like mystic philosophy and the occult. And we'll see more of that later. This moment, like they cut back and forth a lot. Like I feel like in the other movies, it's like we see some of this and then we cut back to like the Germany versus Transylvania scenes are longer. This kind of like cuts back and forth more quickly, I feel like.
Yeah, I would agree.
But
and her reactions are way more like intense, I feel like, to the illness.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Like to the illness,
agree.
To what's happening. Like she's actually like seizing pretty severely.
Yes. Yeah. It's not just some sleepwalking and fainting. It's pretty intense.
Which feels more like urgent. It feels like there should be a higher sense of urgency and all of that, and it makes more sense like what's going on with her and why she's so affected by it.
Yeah.
And ironically, or I guess appropriately, we get a higher intensity of reaction from her, but we still have the same old mundane, she's cuckoo bananas, give her a sedative.
Just tighten her corset and she'll be fine.
Yeah. So I mean, it even more starkly shows like how clueless everybody is to what's actually going on.
Yeah. So Hutter's taken to the church hospital where they do like an exorcism on him, and we get an explanation that Orlok was a black enchanter in his life and the devil preserved his soul so that he may walk again. And Hutter is lost in his shadow, which I do think is more accurate to the novel, because there were a couple versions of this movie where he was like, oh, he's the seed of the devil Belial or whatever.
Yes.
But in the novel, he was sort of like somebody who did live and was kind of like a magic user in life sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like this is more faithful to the original novel too. Let's see. We get the boat scenes. We get the crate. He commands nature to hasten his journey to Germany, and the winds pick up. And he's talking about how soon our flesh shall embrace and we shall be as one. They finally visit Von Franz, who is played by Willem Dafoe, and they tell him about Ellen and her. Oh no, they don't tell him about Ellen. He's like, let me guess. You have a woman who is like struggling in this way, blah, 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 blah. And so they're like, yeah, like, how do you know that? But he like is like, take me to her. Meanwhile, Hutter finally leaves the church on horseback, barely alive. We get the scenes with the ship captain. People have been dying. They fear it's the plague. Their cargo's been cursed. And we cut back to Von Franz seeing Ellen, and he's horrified that they've been tying her up and, stop drugging her.
Yeah.
And
amen.
She tells, honestly, Ellen tells Von Franz about her general spookiness and her nightmares and her epilepsies and her childhood and how it all ended when Thomas came into her life, but it's returned. And she says, she has a great line I like where she asks him, does evil come from within us or beyond?
Yes.
And he doesn't answer that, but I liked that line a lot.
Yeah, I think that was going to be my opening.
Oh, nice.
That other one. It was in like a lot of the trailers too. It was so like, it got you,
Yeah. That night she has one of her fits again, and Von Franz proves to everyone that she's not like connected to this realm at the time by fully stabbing her through the arm with a needle, and which I just don't think was necessary. But
Very
I do
Chris
think they
Angel.
actually, yeah, I do think they did that in the novel too, as I recall.
Yeah.
And he asks like, "What are you seeing?" And she like has a full orgasm while saying he is coming. And then he's like, we get kind of like the Exorcist-esque scene where he's like, yield before this ancient talisman, and she kind of like really throws her body around, and we get some pretty intense possession stuff. And I just wrote down, like, I think she did a phenomenal job of like acting possessed.
I agree. Lily Rose Depp, a lot of physical work in this that we've seen, I'm sure. Well, maybe not you because you don't like horror movies, but that there are a gajillion exorcism movies.
Yes. Yeah.
And some of these scenes, most of them, are so either identical and so corny, like all the symptoms, all the things, and this kind of stuff. She did great. Like,
yeah,
you just felt like it was a real person experiencing like real things.
Yeah.
Oof.
And what's extra wild about this to me is, as you know, I have done drag in my life, and I have a performance where I threw my body around a lot like this, and my body would be sore for days afterwards. Like, and she had to film many scenes like this.
True.
And probably had to film them all multiple times for like multiple takes. I can't imagine how much her body hurt just from filming these scenes. Anyway. Okay. We go back to the ship. The like second mate goes down below deck Dracula to take an axe and end this devil. And we see the like lightning flashes, and you see like Orlok just for a moment like move behind him, which I thought was very creepy.
Yes.
And then he, of course, kills him and eats him and etc. Meanwhile, Knock breaks free of prison and goes running through town half naked and screaming, "Blood is life."
Blood is life. Water is life.
And Ellen finally is like, he's here. And we think she's similarly affected like Knock is, but it's actually Thomas who she has kind of like sensed. And he arrives and he falls off his horse, and she and Harding drag him inside. And he tells Ellen, like, he has your locket. And we get the scene of like men pulling Harding back to the shipyard to show him, like, I do like in this one that the ship has just like kind of crashed.
Yes.
And isn't just like randomly on fire. Again, I do think that was the most novel accurate.
That was so dumb that it was on fire.
Was so weird.
Yeah. This one they call it a plague ship.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, like, was that a thing? Like,
yes.
A plague ship?
I think so. I think it was a thing.
Yeah. Oof. Yikes.
Yeah.
What
let's see. We get a little scene between Orlok and Knock where Knock is like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And Orlok is like, leave me the fuck alone. Like, shut up.
I did like their relationship in this.
Yeah.
It felt like a like master who completely disregards this like servant of the Dark One kind of thing,
Yeah. Exactly.
Was Knock foaming at the mouth? Yeah, I did write that he was foaming at the mouth.
That was before he escaped.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh yeah, when he bit the guard. That's right.
Yes, exactly. So we get a cool scene of Orlok's hand like reaching over the town and like the shadow of his hand creeping along the rooftops, and I thought that was amazing.
Okay.
And again,
And
Okay, go ahead.
that's when I went to the bathroom in the movie theater.
No.
I walked back I went as fast as I couldn't hold it. It was like, what is this, 2 hours, I think, more?
Yeah.
I cannot believe I held it through Wicked. I had to go. I had to pee. I come back and Davey's like, you missed this really cool scene of the hand over the city.
Oh,
and I was
no.
like, no. I have watched it since. I did find it and watched it. And I thought it was really cool. But I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that's what I missed.
Yeah, it's so good.
It was so good. And I like that it wasn't just like a long, spindly hand. It was kind of like bony.
Yeah.
The shadow.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway.
It's very spooky, very effective, very reminiscent of the novel and his like kind of hold he has over the town. So he goes and visits Ellen in person and basically tells her that love is inferior to her and says, you are not of humankind, and says that I am an appetite and nothing more.
Oof.
And I love that. And he tells her that she is the one who awakened him and stirred him from his grave, and that he calls her his affliction. So I kind of love the concept that like she is as much like sort of torturing him as he is her, like that she awakened him and like kind of renewed this like appetite and hunger within him. I think having them kind of like be each other's foil is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is where he tells her that your husband signed his name and gave you to me for a sack of gold. And they almost kiss, which is super gross. And then she says, I abhor you. And he kind of loses it and says that I will give you 3 nights to come to me. Tonight is the first. And I will, if the 3rd night you do not submit to me, your husband shall die by my hand. Till you come to me, you shall watch the world become naught.
Very well done.
Thank you. Anna gets eaten by rats.
Yes. Anna
sort
gets
of.
eaten by rats. Immediately next scene.
Yes. Yes.
Oof.
And
Jarring.
this is where Harding kind of like gets fed up with Ellen and her shit and basically like kicks her and Hutter out of the house and is like, go home, you've brought nothing but trouble to me, etc. Severs and Von Franz, meanwhile, go to Knock's estate house and find his like book of secrets.
Pentagram on the ground.
Yeah. Von Franz goes to Harding, and Harding is like, how can this thing be killed? And Von Franz basically says, like, we don't know. Like, in every version of a tale of something like this, it basically says that he must return to the grave by first crow of cock. So basically, like, sunlight seems to be the only thing. Mm-hmm. And he kicks them out, even though Von Franz is like, no, he's going to come back and fight on your wife. Like, we need to protect you. And he's like, no, I've had enough. Get out. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is where we get the true Ellen possession scene. Well, not the true one, but like, I think the one that people would be most familiar with, where Ellen finally confesses to Thomas about how that she knows Orlok and she brought this evil upon them. She sought company as a youth, and she called out and had never known such bliss, but then it turned to torture, and he took me as his lover and he has come back. And she like gets possessed again and berates him and says they never should have been married, we're already dead. And we get her like demon contortion face, and again, really good work. Yeah.
And I think she says that Nosferatu now is her melancholy and her shame.
Yeah.
Oof.
She kind of alternates between like contrition and possession in the scene a couple of times, because she's like begging Thomas to stay, and then she like you can see her like she does a really good job of like her body shifting when or like her eyes shifting when you can tell she's sort of like under his thrall, because then she like says, you could never please me as he could, and then they fuck while she screams, let him see our love, and then she starts drooling blood, and it's eerie.
Yes. Yeah, that was crazy. She does some really good work in this scene.
Yes.
This was one of those scenes where people behind me were like, what is going on? And I was like, shut up.
Yeah, seriously.
Go watch some porn.
Yeah. So, of course, this is night 2. Orlok kills the girls of Harding and his wife. He orders Harding to wake not with his shadow hand, and then goes and kills the girls, and then kills Ellen. So then we cut to their funeral, and Harding is like screaming at Ellen and, insists that none of this vampire stuff any of them are talking about is real, that like this is just the plague or whatever. And Hutter shows him the teeth marks on his chest, and he's like, it's real, it's real. So they make a plan to break into the castle tonight and find him and stake him. And this is when Ellen asks von Franz to walk him to his door. And number one, her costuming in the scene, the little like veil hat that she's wearing is so cool.
Yes, I agree.
And this is where she tells him like, it must be me. And they basically kind of have like a little heart to heart about like, yeah, you're the only one who can save us. And von Franz promises to keep her husband at bay tonight while you deal with Nosferatu. Mm-hmm. We get kind of an, in my mind, unnecessary scene where Harding like breaks into his wife's coffin and like kisses her corpse. And then later on, they find him there dead. And I'm not sure, I don't really understand how he's meant to have died.
I think he gets the plague.
Seems fast.
Yeah, I don't know. Huh. Maybe there's rats around where she is.
Maybe.
And he just he wanted to die with her kind of thing. I think they were trying to do some kind of emotional manipulative moment.
Oh, okay. So they go to Orlok's castle that night, and we get a little voiceover of Orlok saying, "Behold the third night." And we get a scene from below of Lily Rose Depp opening the window and like bidding him come to her. And I just thought the way that was filmed was so great. Mm-hmm. They like find his coffin, but it's empty and there's just rats everywhere. And this is where he realizes that he's after Ellen, and von Franz was in on it. And he starts to run away, and von Franz is like, no, stop, like her dark bond with the beast shall redeem us all. And then we cut to Ellen like dressed in bridal white as she sees the castle burning, and Orlok's shadow, we get the kind of like hand shadow kind of coming up the walls and opening the door to her bedroom. And he's like, do you accept our covenant? And she's like, yeah. And they kiss, and yeah. And then they kiss and have sex. And I don't think we really needed to see like boobs in this movie. I feel like, you know, I just, whenever like women have to be nude in movies, I'm always like, did we need this? Anyway, he climbs on her, he bites her, she moans, they have sex. Hutter is racing home against the sunlight, and Orlok like starts to pull away, and kind of like the 1979 version, she like pulls him back, which I thought was great and is like more. And Lily Rose Depp does this kind of like great sort of, as she's dying, smile. Like there's just like the faintest smile on her face as she like realizes that she's succeeded in what she aims to do. Yeah. And she kind of like holds him as the sunlight hits him, and he like the way he dies in this movie is very gross, but I thought probably my favorite of all of them.
I agree. It was so intense.
Yeah.
Like the screaming sort of sound, like they have him dying like sort of, well, this is a really terrible comparison, but remember Hocus Pocus? The end of Hocus Pocus, with the turning to stone type thing. It was kind of like that, but really extreme and like rotting away, you know, like old. I don't know. It was very, but this sort of guttural roaring. Yeah, roar. That's a good word for it. That came out of him. Yeah, and like it sounded so. I don't know. It was so intense. It was very intense.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, Hutter, as usual, arrives just as she dies, and von Franz says, "Forgive us," and then quotes the book and says, "And lo, the maiden fair did offer up her love unto the beast, and with him lay in close embrace until the final cock crowed." And then we get a final shot of Orlok's body on top of hers, and they're like covered in lilacs, and it's gross.
Yeah.
A couple pieces of trivia that I wanted to share about this movie are that in this movie, Ellen has a cat named Greta, and that is an allusion to Greta Schrader, who played Ellen in the original movie. Harding's first name was Friedrich, which Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau was the director of the original film. Von Franz's first name of Albin is a nod to Albin Grau, who was the producer of the 1992 one. Dr. Seaver's first name was Wilhelm was another nod to F.W. Murnau. Oh, and then originally, Daniel Day-Lewis and Mads Mikkelsen were considered for the roles of Orlok, which I thought would have been interesting choices. But again, super happy that they went with Bill Skarsgård.
Oh, me too. Daniel Day-Lewis probably would have done a great job, but it would have been totally different.
Yeah,
because he does like
definitely.
That, like method acting, right? Where he's like in the character.
Yeah.
Oh, funny.
Oh, we'll get there.
But yeah, that's cool. I love that. I read a lot about, not a lot, I read a little bit about the symbolism of like the lilacs because they were purple.
Oh, yeah.
Even when it was black and white, which I thought looked really cool. And like, it's just all about, I mean, I don't think this is any news to anybody, but lilac symbolism of being like death and decay and that sort of thing. And I thought that was kind of cool. I heard that like lilacs smell sort of like is supposed to symbolize that too, like purple ones specifically. Interesting. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Because they're sort of beautiful, but they do feel sad in this context, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially that color against the contrasty black and white moments and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think those were all my pieces of trivia for this movie.
Yeah, anything I had kind of peppered in as we talked about it, I think. I don't think I have anything separate. Just that he had like a ton of prosthetics, which you mentioned the penis one, so...
yeah,
but I'm, like we said, he's done that before, and I just thought this was great.
Yeah, definitely.
The ratings. Do you want to hear the ratings from
the I am ready.
IMDb 7.3.
Wow. Okay.
Rotten Tomatoes. The tomato meter is 84%, and the audience popcorn meter is 74%.
Interesting. Huh. That's really surprising. Those are all lower than the 1922 version and all lower than the 1979 version as well.
Yeah.
Which I think we both know how we feel about the 1979 version.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of people reviewing these things through a lens of
impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to say, I think the high ratings on some of these older ones is like a little snooty.
I see. Okay.
A little snootiness about the legend of what it means and all of that. And some of these that are being reviewed now have been viewed through very, very critical lenses because we're very, very critical people these days.
Yeah.
So
what would you rate this one?
I really, really enjoyed this one. I think I liked it the best of all of them. What did I rate the first one?
So you gave 1922 a 6.8, 1979 a 4.6, and 2023 a 3.5.
Okay, I'm going to give it a 7 point... No, I'll give it an 8. I'll give it an 8.0.
All right.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a little long for me.
There were moments where...
so fucking long.
I agree, yeah.
But I enjoyed the whole time. But I felt the time much more than I did in something like Wicked, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there were some moments that I was like, okay, come on.
I'm going to give it a 9, which is the rating I gave the 1922 version and the 2023 version.
You're sick. What held it back from a 10 or what brought it to a 9 for you?
I think just there, like you said, I think there could have been moments that were edited out, like Harding and the funeral scene. Like I don't think it added anything. And so I think I might have trimmed out some of those moments to make the film a little bit faster. Because I do think it was a little long. Yeah, I think just a little bit. If it had been an hour and 30 minutes and still this good, I might have given it a 10.
Okay.
So for me, this movie is a beauty. What about you?
I would say this is a definite beauty, for sure.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks for sticking around. Next week, we're going to begin Jumanji. I'm really excited about it. So, 1995. Have you seen the original Jumanji? I
saw it in theaters.
Oh, I saw it. I loved it. I had the board game. We'll talk more about it next week.
Okay.
In the meantime, if anyone out there would like to help us grow, the very best thing you could be doing is rating us and reviewing us on the podcast platform you're listening to us on right now.
That's right. Also, the best way for other people to find out about our podcast is through word of mouth. So please tell a friend, post about us on Reddit, or find some other way to spread the word.
And our social media is RebootyPod on Instagram. You can email us at rebootypod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, so send us a message. Let us know what you think.
Also, we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/nandmatt. You get cool bonus episodes where we do things like review movies, play games. So check that out.
Yeah, and thank you so much for listening to Rebooty and the Beast.
See you next week.
Bye.